You work more than you feel like. You invest into coaches, courses, you push harder, doing everything that should move you forward. And this probably leaves you behind, feeling exhausted, drained, maybe even annoyed, wondering how the business that was supposed to give you freedom in the first place made you end up here. But here's the part most people never see. There's something inside you that quietly steers your behavior, and until you understand that mechanism, you'll repeat the same loop over and over again, no matter how much you work. And if you ever found yourself asking yourself the question, how the fuck am I doing so much, but just not having my breakthrough? This video will finally answer that question. Because your breakthrough isn't missing because you're too ambitious or not ambitious enough, it's missing because of one blind spot. And that is, you don't understand how you and your brain actually work. In this video, we'll reveal that part and give you all those insights to finally shift your reality and change your life. And once you see that, your reality will start to shift. Before we go deeper into this, I want to use a client of mine as an example because his situation perfectly shows how this mechanism works and how we actually can shift it. He's running a 7-figure agency, but felt completely stuck. His profit disappeared, mistakes increased, and for every little problem, he just hired another freelancer. And the company somehow kept growing, his team kept growing, but the motivation to actually perform just went down. He stopped going to the office, costs went up, performance went down of himself and his team, and even his marriage started to fall apart. He tried multiple coaching programs, but nothing actually changed him. It was all good information, but zero transformation. And by the time he reached me, he was emotionally exhausted, financially stressed, 200K in debt, and trapped in a pattern that he could not just break alone. And this is exactly where most ambitious people just get stuck. So the first important base is to understand that there's nothing wrong with you. You actually work perfectly well because people most of the time think there's something wrong with them. They're not disciplined enough, they're not good enough, they're procrastinating too much, they're lazy, they're not right, and so on. But the truth is, your brain, your system is perfectly fine and works for you as everything else in nature does. It has a purpose and a reason. You don't see a tree sabotaging itself, right? Or water all of a sudden thinking like, oh, maybe I should go up the river instead of down. And you as a human, you're a part of nature, and therefore it means your brain, your conditions, and your behavior works for you. And if you're stuck somehow, similar to my client maybe, you have to understand that there's a purpose and a reason for why your system and your brain brought you into that situation. So if you feel demotivated, not energized, tired, exhausted, angry, the worst thing you can do is try to override that feeling and judge yourself for that. The best thing you can do is actually recognize why it's there and recognize its purpose and how it's helping you in some sorts of circumstance. And in my client's example, after speaking to him for a while, I understood that he was sharing an office with a client of his and this client didn't pay him. And he was shit afraid of confronting them or the client with that topic. So he rather did not go to the office and communicate kindly via email. And there are people who are even afraid of becoming rich and wealthy, right? Some people have the idea that rich and wealthy people are bad people, and therefore they sabotage their success. They sabotage actually receiving a lot of money, just using this as an example, because they associate something bad with it. They judge it as negative. And therefore, their subconscious behavior, they might not even be aware of that. They might not even be aware of those subconscious beliefs that they sabotage their success in a way that they might become successful in something, but never being really recognized for that, never being seen for that, never really receiving the value, if that's in form of compliments or in form of money. They just don't receive that. So another example is, imagine you're a speaker, okay? You're wanting to be a speaker, speaking in front of thousands of people, and you're good at speaking. You love speaking. You maybe spoke in front of a couple people, in front of a group, and so on. But now you want to go for the big gigs. So you're doing everything to get to big publishers, to big events, and so on. And there you are, almost getting that deal. But somehow your brain finds a way to sabotage that because you might feel super afraid of being genuinely seen, being criticized, being judged, being positioned into a certain light. Maybe you judge it to be the center of in the whole room. Maybe your parents taught you, don't go for attention, don't seek recognition. And now you're wanting to become actually a speaker because you might be really good in doing that, but there's either judgment, there's some other sorts of limit that causes you then to sabotage gigs and sales calls and contracts and so on. How could that happen? By you just getting sick, your system feeling so overwhelmed that you every time in front of before a proper event, before a speech that you could hold, you somehow get sick, you don't feel proper, you start somehow failing, you lose your voice, you start not speaking properly, you get very insecure, you feel extreme fear, and so on. So somehow you make it to be super busy, getting closer to success, but whenever success is just ready to be received, you somehow find a way to provoke it away from you. And that is how your brain in that particular situation would find a way and a solution to keep you in that comfort zone, to keep you in a position where you feel safe, where you feel aligned with your value system and so on, right? Imagine you're judging it to be really seen in the middle of the world and everyone sees you. And imagine your parents told you that that's bad and that you're just seeking recognition, and therefore you feel maybe shame or guilt for being in that position. Then your brain will find the perfect solution and create this perfect circumstances to avoid that from happening. Okay, therefore your brain thinks, oh, I'm actually successful. While you think, oh, fuck, what am I for a failure that I again found a way to actually sabotage my success? Maybe you find yourself then procrastinating, consuming social media, being then sick, hating maybe yourself, but you did not recognize nature's purpose in all that, right? And because you don't see it, because the awareness is missing, because there's this blind spot, you can't actually let go of it. You can't actually reframe it. You can actually not really let go and transform into a successful, better, new version of yourself. There is that limit. So as you see, there are different reasons for people to experience their limits, and it's individual. So if you're interested to finding out where you hold yourself back, just look under this video. There's a link. You can book a 30-minute discovery call with me, and I'll make sure that you get all the things out of this call that will help you to actually change and shift your reality. Let's get back to my client's situation. Basically, what we realized, he's in a state of fear. And fear is basically a state, an emotional state that shows us that we are confronted with the unknown. What will happen if I actually cancel that contract with the office and my former client, or that client who doesn't pay? What will happen if I confront that client? Will he even ever pay? What will happen if I confront my employees that I have to actually let them go? Will they still do their jobs right? Will they just leave and I'm just going to be left alone with that work? Long story short, we have to understand, and you also yourself have to understand, it's not mainly about the story outside. It's really important that we come back to a place where we look inside and see what is it that we feel and change that feeling. And in his situation, it was fear. Why is that so important? Because coming out of a place of fear, we're weak, we're not empowered, we don't feel strong, we don't feel like we have the control over the situation. So therefore, what have we done? We have, first of all, recognized that weak position that he saw himself in. And we ask ourselves, how do we actually want to deal with that situation? Because you feel fear not knowing how to deal further with that situation, not knowing what will come. Therefore, we sat down, we looked at the situation, what does not align? Where do you feel fear, insecurity, unsafety from? And we specifically just dealt with those situations, like confronting employees for either bad work that they've done. We fired people that he personally felt afraid of. We confronted his client who didn't pay. We canceled that office that he was sharing with that client and started to build a new office and, make those moves and clear out all the things that did not align with him anymore. The things that he personally felt just so afraid of before. So that's super important that we have to understand. Taking then responsibility has never been about being busy or doing lots of work or doing much of work. Making actually a proper shift through taking responsibility is actually looking, where do I feel misaligned? Where do I feel fear? Where am I running away from confrontation, running away from certain situations, right? So if you are stuck now, if you feel busy, if you feel like you're doing so much, there might be something where you're running away from, where you're not actually looking into and not taking full responsibility over your situation. Of course, because inside, emotionally, mentally, internally, it might feel fucking scary. It might feel challenging. Maybe you won't know how that will feel for you, and therefore you're avoiding certain situations. But exactly those things will make you jump into a whole new level. So what happened with my client? He basically made it out of his debt. He lost many employees, which was amazing. He just fired a lot, and some other people chose to leave, which left him feeling like quite happy and relieved, to be honest. And he was always afraid, oh, they won't like me. But it happened that his revenue just kept actually being the same. He got his team, the people who just stayed with him, a lot more efficient. He raised the standards in his team, and he reduced so many costs. Therefore, he came out of that, he performed better, he had joy again in his business, and his business provided him the freedom, joy, and financial success that he actually was working for. So therefore, we changed actually not just his business, but his whole private life too, with then having more money for himself, having space and time, and also a quality relationship for his employees, to his business partners, to his marriage, and his children. He was not just running away and kept himself somehow busy. And therefore, I invite you to just genuinely take some time and look at what you are running away from, what you are actually avoiding, and why you're avoiding it. And sometimes it's, you recognize, oh shit, there's something that I'm avoiding, but you feel overwhelmed, you feel challenged because you don't know. Maybe your brain does not know how to deal with that. And we have to not judge ourselves for that, but actually have compassion, because maybe no one showed us how to deal with certain circumstances. That's it. Like where I come from, I grew up in circumstances where my father wanted me to become an engineer and study and do school. I was lost when I founded my first companies. I was completely overwhelmed in certain circumstances. Would I have been able to compare myself with other entrepreneurs and stuff then, who, let's say, had successful entrepreneurs as parents? No, of course not. Their brain saw their parents, how they dealt with debt, with financial stress, with challenges, with other circumstances. I have never had that experience, but I had different experience that made me who I am today. It's now important for you that you take that moment and take that time to actually reflect on where are you, what are you avoiding, based on what feelings. And I know so many entrepreneurs, so many high achievers, they just judge feelings. They're like, fuck feelings, we just have to work and push harder. Be aware you might running away from something, and you could just find yourself 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line in the same position like now, because you've been ignorant enough to just keep running away from it. Therefore, I genuinely invite you, no matter how much money you make, how successful you are, or what's your position or your mindset or your mentors, I genuinely invite you to look at the situation, take responsibility, look what's the situation, and then you choose how to respond to it. That's actually taking responsibility. And from that moment, we know how to deal with situations and actually shift our reality. If you like that video, feel free to comment down below what you like, give me proper criticism, give me feedback so I know how to improve. Let me know topics that I can dive into. Don't forget to follow, don't to give me a thumbs up if you liked that video and it was helpful for you. And if you personally feel like you need guidance or that could be very helpful for you in your current situation, book yourself a free 30-minute call with me. Just click the link down below. Looking forward to see you. All the best and see you in the next video.